Hey up internet, we are live with the first of my new series that I'm calling Introducing and where I plan to introduce up and coming new YouTubers who have less than 100 subs. And the first person that I am introducing is um, a YouTuber by the name of Strawman Atheist, and he's a brilliant guy. I've chatted with him a few times, and his first video is just excellent. It's a really excellent standard, and so I thought I'd give him the opportunity to introduce himself and introduce his channel. So, Strawman, why don't you say a few words about yourself and where you're, to give the viewers a bit of context of where you're coming from.
Well, thank you. I have to say I'm flattered all that. I just really tossed a bunch of stuff together and tried to get it going. But I'm Strawman Atheist. I'm a former Christian, and now I'm speaking out against some of the just religious dogma and some of the issues that are facing people within churches that are hidden from like the outside. And I'm a big history buff, so that's kind of where I'm focusing at, is in the history and what has actually happened and what was just myth and all that crazy spin that people do.
So it's really good. It sounds like you're well versed in history and church history and the origins of Christianity as well.
Oh yes, I actually considered going to seminary at one point, becoming a minister.
All right,
I think I've gone the opposite direction now.
Yes, I went to Bible college, and here I am, an atheist.
I worked in churches for years. Like I actually only became an atheist this year.
All right, okay.
But like as soon as it happened, it's like the blind fell off, and I'm like, what is all this?
Yeah, I can relate to that.
One crack and the whole thing just came crumbling down. I was like, no. And that's where I just got all the idea. I'm like, how did I believe any of this? And how can I get people to see how crazy this actually is?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I know the feeling. Well, why don't you tell people a bit about your channel?
Well, I've only got 2 videos up right now. One's just my teaser, and the other one's my first video, The Forbidden Knowledge in Christianity. And it's just about it's a trope. Like, I mean, every religion has the myth of forbidden knowledge. I mean, you've got the Greeks with Pandora's box and Prometheus with the fire. You've got just all this mythology that does it, and everybody acts like the Bible is separate. No, it's the same exact spiel over again and over again. And I went into several different stories of like the apple in the garden or the Tower of Babel, and even the accounts from the Apocrypha Enoch, which completely contradicts the Bible. That's why it was left out. But
yeah.
And I'm actually, the next video I'm planning on, I've ran a poll on Twitter, and I'm going to do the history of Satan and the demons from the Christianity and just show where all this stuff came from and what they actually pulled from, because Satan actually really doesn't exist until near about the beginning of the New Testament. All that old stuff is just thrown in later.
Okay.
And demons didn't really exist either, nor hell. That's pretty much all kind of editing later and absorption from other myths.
Yeah, that sounds like a really interesting video. And you're right. There's no, hell doesn't get a mention in the Old Testament. We don't see that doctrine begin to develop into the New Testament.
Exactly. A lot of it came from the idea of like burning and stuff. I know it came from, I can't remember the exact story. I think it was Daniel, maybe, when the 3 men were thrown into the fire, and like Jesus or the angel appeared in there, who all the Christians claim it was Jesus, but no, it was just an angel, or sometimes it said it was God. But that's kind of one of the first ideas where hell really comes from, the Christian belief. And then you get Dante's Inferno, which blows it way up there.
Yeah, yeah. I studied Dante's Inferno at Bible college.
It's a beautiful book.
Oh yeah, and you can see that a lot of doctrine of hellfire has come straight from Dante's Inferno.
Oh, yes. I'm from the South, so I have been to hellfire and brimstone. If you don't get saved right now, the Lord is going to burn you tonight kind of ministers.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen a few ministers like that myself. Yes, but it's mostly out of Dante's Inferno, not the Bible.
Yeah. And then there's some stuff from the Zoroastrians that was actually came in. That's where like the torture of hell came in. Before then, the idea that the Jews had was Sheol, which was basically the same thing as the underworld in Greek mythology. Nobody, good people, bad people, all went there. It's just what happened when you died.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. And of course, famously, there's a famous story about King Samuel and the witch at Endor, where he he tries to get the witch to summon up the spirit of Saul, and she manages it, and Saul is in Sheol.
yeah, because like heaven really wasn't even a thing for humans in the Jewish mythology. It only really became that with the New Testament, some of the revisions of the later prophets, and the later prophets basically all contradict everything. But they're all fulfilled prophecy according to them.
Exactly, yeah. And and of course Samuel said, this time tomorrow you'll be here with me in Sheol. So there's that sense that the good and the evil go to the same place.
Definitely. And then they copied that, like, I don't remember exactly which one. I don't think it was John. John's the most fantastical one of them, but I think it was one of the earlier Gospels, Matthew, Mark, or Luke, and Mark was the first one. But one of those, Jesus quotes that exact line, but he says, instead of Sheol, he says paradise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So what made you decide to start your channel?
Well, for a while, I mean, I was like, okay, I'm just watching these videos, because actually I started watching a lot of these videos when I was really just like in the midst of like, okay, I really don't know if I believe this. I'm gonna just look at some other stuff just to get some entertainment. I'd already watched Godless Engineer and Professor Stick for a good while, but then I found like Logic and Telltale Atheist, and let's see who's some Vice Rhino, and Apologia too. And I found all them, and I'm like, these guys have really good arguments and stuff like that. And it just like it came from there. I was like, I know a lot about what they teach, but I don't know, like, and now I know a lot about what's actually fact, and I see the disconnect between it because I've got several friends that were raised sort of secular, kind of Christian, and they're not really actually practicing. They're all just atheists, and they say atheists are agnostic when you ask them. But like I've talked about some of the mythology with them, they're like, "What is that?" Because they've never heard it. I was like, "Really? We're in the South," and I'm surprised anybody has not heard it. But that's what the idea come from, was to explain like where these ideas come from, because unless you actually look at it, many people take the Bible at face value. So this is where all the stories come from, instead of actually looking at the earlier mythology. And that's what I'm planning on trying to do, is include this early mythology.
That's really good actually. And I really look forward to seeing more of your videos, because they're very informative, and I think you'll educate a lot of people. I think it will help a lot of people who, like you say, haven't really looked into this stuff, to learn about the origins of Christianity and Judaism, and the history behind it all. I think it'll be an eye opener to many people, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely. I remember a while back I had a coworker, and he was an atheist, and like I mentioned something about all different denominations. He's like, I thought y'all were all just Catholic. It's like, no, Protestants are way different.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like he had never heard of anything other than Catholic, really, because he just assumed they were all the same. And I explained all the different peculiarities between each denomination to him. He's like, so how do they all justify being that crazy against each other?
Yeah.
No idea.
Yes. Yeah, I know. It's yeah, it's crazy. You know, more denominations are being started all the time.
Oh yeah, like I'm trying to remember what it was. There's a actually there was like a new sect of I was Baptist when I was raised, or Southern Baptist, which is the crazy ones. Like the
Okay.
real regular Baptists are very agreeable. Like I've seen, like most people understand that, and when you say Baptist, that's what people think. Southern Baptist is where you find the what was it? The Baptist White Knights, which was the KKK resurgence in the 70s. That's where
Okay.
you find them. Like I literally sat through sermons that where the preacher said if uh, Westboro Baptist Church didn't preach against the soldiers, they would agree with them.
All right.
That was their only issue, was that they were anti-patriots.
Oh, I see. I see.
And these were like good people, nice people.
Yeah.
And they were like, in one of the things, the pastor literally said, we should hang the gays. And I'm like, what the fuck is up with this?
Yeah. That's messed up, isn't it?
Yeah, and like, that just like drove me away from organized religion. But I was still for a while believer, just not didn't go to church because they're just too many around here are just nuts. So
Yeah. So, which brings me, kind of nicely on to the next question. What would you say was the main catalyst for you ditching your faith altogether?
it was more of a like it was kind of a slow, gradual thing, and it built up over years, and it just into this uh, what's it called? Cognitive dissonance. Like I remember in fourth grade was what the first time I had a science class. Like before that, we just had math, a little bit of history and English and stuff. So we get a science class, and I'm looking through the book because I am a huge nerd. Like I was reading it in class,
Yeah.
and like I'm like, what is this evolution? I was wondering about it, and we got to the chapter, and the teacher said, "This is just a stupid thing. We're skipping it."
All right. Okay.
I'm like, well, why not? She said, because it's, why won't you teach it? She said, because it's stupid and you don't need to know it's against the Bible. I'm like, well, I still think we should just like look at it and just like see how it's stupid or whatever. And I got sent to the principal.
Okay.
And then just, uh, I know after that I went home and I was like, well, I'm just going to ask somebody else. And I asked my dad, and it was like I had murdered somebody.
Right.
I mean, little fourth grade kid. I was like, hey, Dad, what's this? And instantly he is screaming at me. I'm like, I still don't like, he wouldn't even talk about it. And he says, go to your room or whatever. I'm like, I have no idea what I even did. I was just asking what it was.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I had a computer then. So I was looking online. I was like, okay, this is kind of crazy. I was like, but it makes a little sense, but it's I don't know. And it just sat there for years and like slowly and slowly. And as I got more science classes and more history classes, I'm like, I started being more like the kind of the Christian that believes it's all parable. It may or may not have happened. It's more of a guide to how you should have lived or whatever.
Oh, yeah. All right.
But,
Okay.
and that's pretty common, but they usually draw the line at just like some of the stories, like maybe the Jonah and the whale didn't happen, or it didn't happen exactly like it because, or like Exodus, they'll say it was just a version and it just got changed over the years because the Exodus never happened.
No.
And I mean, even many theologians and people up high up in churches agree with that, but down here they still teach it
Yeah.
like it is the truth. But just over the years, it just slowly wore away until one day I was like, I don't believe in this at all.
Right.
I was like, why am I keeping it around? I was like, I haven't. And then I'm like, no, it's just, I was like, I can still believe it just doesn't have to be totally factual. And that rocked on for about 3 more years until a few, like, actually it was like late 2017. And then I'm finally like, nope, done. Can't take it anymore.
Yeah, I think it was a similar journey for me. Um, it was a gradual journey. I mean, I I used to be part of a Pentecostal fundamentalist Pentecostal church.
Those are fun.
Yeah, and yeah, we took the Bible literally, and I was completely fundamental in in my faith, and but I think eventually I grew more and more what what fundamental Christians would call liberal in my faith in my beliefs, and especially after going to Bible college and learning how to um, critically analyze the biblical texts and learning about historical context and all and all the rest of it, and and eventually, and I think it got to a point where I I stopped reading the Old Testament first, because I didn't want anything to do with the Old Testament God, and I couldn't um, reconcile the God of the Old Testament with the Jesus of the New Testament. And to cut a long story short, I eventually ditched the Bible and then faith altogether. So it's been a gradual journey for me as well.
Oh yeah, it's pretty much
Sorry,
the
go on.
same exact story for me.
Yeah,
Just, and that's what I did too. Like Old Testament, nah, doesn't matter. And then it started with just a few stories, picking those out, like the laws of Leviticus. I'm like, okay, these are stupid.
yeah,
I'm like, no shellfish, which I don't like fish to begin with, but I'm like, what's wrong with shellfish? Like, I want an explanation why they're bad.
yeah,
I've still not found an explanation. I found an explanation for the for a couple of them, but none of the other ones. Like tattoos, I know that was over slavery because a slave would be marked with their master's seal or whatever, and if they found somebody with a tattoo, they just kidnap them and take them until they found their master, or torture them.
yeah.
And then there's one about no meat and dairy mixed together, and that was over sacrifices to Baal, where they would boil a lamb in its mother's milk.
That's right. Yeah,
But
and
then oh, sorry.
my dad is Jewish, and so I went through a phase of learning all I could about Judaism, and I saw a documentary about the kosher. There's a city in England called Manchester, and there's a Jewish community there. Quite a large Jewish community, and the title of the documentary was the Kosher Police, and basically these rabbis go around these Jewish restaurants and cafes and what have you, and they check to see if their food is being cooked kosherly. And Jewish restaurants, they have to have a separate kitchen where they prepare the meat and a separate kitchen where they prepare the dairy products, and it's all based on this one verse in Leviticus: you shall not cook
Steep a kid in its mother's milk.
yeah, that's right, cook the kid in its mother's milk. And it's all of these rules and regulations have come from that one verse. It's unbelievable.
Oh, it's crazy how far you can push one little. I mean, you can just look at like Baptists and stuff like that. They'll show one tiny phrase, and that's the whole fundamental of their ideology.
Yeah,
And you can make something out of anything, though.
exactly.
Uh, but yeah, that about there's a similar thing back home for me, but it's not like Jewish and eating stuff. It's about alcohol.
Mm.
The town that I grew up in was a dry county, which is it's just like the divisions of. Do y'all have counties or
Uh,
stuff like something similar?
yeah, we've got counties. Yeah.
Okay, so mine was a dry county, but a wet town, and it only had one town in the entire area. So, and that town could sell beer and light wine, but that's it.
Oh, right.
And then there's also rules about like the churches there can't be a store that sells beer next to a church.
Right.
They can't sell alcohol on Sunday. So nobody follows that rule. Nobody. But like there were restaurants trying to get permits to sell beer, and pretty much the same thing was happening. These churches would go in and they go looking for some reason to be able to say, "Oh, they're breaking the law, so you need to deny this license or whatever."
All right. So they kind of got stuck in the prohibition almost.
And that's another funny thing too. It's like if you know anything about like the American, like the denominations in America and the South, the Methodists were the ones pushing prohibition. The Baptists were the one fighting prohibition. They wanted to keep alcohol okay, but now it's flipped, and the Methodists are the sane ones that like they're probably like the least nuts out of any of them, and like I think they even have like uh, LGBT ministers and stuff now.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I can't remember. But Baptists are now the ones that are like no alcohol or anything. They'll drink it, but they won't tell anybody. So there's a joke that how can you tell if you've been a Baptist or a Methodist in a liquor store? Methodists will come up and shake your hand. The Baptists will run away from you.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you always got to take two Baptists when you go fishing, because if there's only one, he'll drink all your beer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, that's.
I remember at Bible college there are quite a few Americans, and we had some interesting discussions because American Pentecostals don't drink whatsoever. They will not drink alcohol. It's forbidden. But British Pentecostals say it's okay moderation, and so you can imagine the discussions that we were that we would have.
And I mean, you've got one holy book, and you got 100 different interpretations of it, and that doesn't make any sense. If this is supposed to be your guide, oh, my dog just knocked my guitar over. Sorry.
That was nice.
All right, I'm back.
Okay.
But yeah, you get all these different interpretations on the same exact phrase. I'm like, and they're all like, you've got to read into it. There's a quote Aaron Ross says, it's they read between the lines, but then don't read the lines.
Yes.
And that is one of the truest things I have ever heard.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, just in one church, there'll probably be a dozen or so different interpretations.
Oh yeah, that's like we had arguments over the church that I went to had a Halloween festival. Well, there were some people that would like just throw a fit every year because they had a Halloween festival on church grounds, and then other people were like, "It's just candy and kids."
Yeah,
and I mean that was a big thing, and it's like there was one of the church I went to had a drummer because it was a kind of a for Southern Baptists it was very modern.
Okay.
And they had a drummer that would play along with stuff. And one day, one of his sleeves came up, and he had a sleeve tattoo.
Shock horror.
Half the church was like, "Oh, it's fine." The other half pretty much ran him out of the church. Like, he was asked to leave.
Oh dear.
Yeah, just because he had a tattoo.
That is insane.
And it wasn't even, it was actually a small minority of the church that did that, but they started rumors. Like, they were saying he's probably a drug addict, he's been to prison, probably beats his wife and stuff like that. Nicest guy I've ever met. Dude wouldn't even touch like any alcohol. Like, I can't remember what had happened. Like, he'd been on like he's been a chaperone on a trip, and somebody said something about we were actually in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It's called Winter Extreme. It's a big church conference thing where music comes. And somebody mentioned something about Old Smoky Moonshine, which is a distillery up there. And he said, I've never had any alcohol before. He's like, I don't want to. But those same people are the ones yelling at him, saying he's probably a drunk and alcoholic. And
yeah,
they eat their own. It's just,
it's terrible.
Oh yeah. It's one thing being an outsider and them looking down on you. It's another thing to actually be part of the group and them all turning on you.
Yeah, exactly. You've got a really great, a really well drawn avatar. Why don't you explain a bit about your avatar and the inspiration behind that?
I love to draw and just love stuff like that. And I was just doodling and I came up with this, like, kind of, I really don't know what he was. I couldn't do facial features, so I just made his face a mask. This was years ago, and I found the drawing and I was like, I'm gonna update that. I can draw a lot better now. And I just started doing it. I was like, this is kind of cool. It's kind of creepy looking. And I love stuff like that. And I finally eventually made it to a scarecrow. I was like, yeah, I've got a unique avatar. Then I remembered Godless Iowa, and I was like, shit, too late now.
Yeah.
But it's just, I don't really know where it came from. It just popped in, and I was like, I like it.
Brilliant. That's that's really good. I mean, and the image that was conjured up in my mind when I first saw it was, this guy is going to crucify some straw dummies.
Yeah, I remember that comment you said. It's like, I like, because like the whole thing about it is like Strawman Atheists. I'm like, I'm wanting to be the guy that they always talk about in the church, is like, this is what they believe, and I'm like, actually, no, you're wrong. And that's kind of the whole idea behind it.
Yeah,
it's like
great.
And that's kind of why I left my avatar on it hanging on a cross. I was like, I originally had him just like sitting somewhere, and I was like, no, he's got to be up front and center, and kind of it's just a message like, hey, you're arguing with the wrong people, you're fighting the wrong people. We don't care if you actually believe anything or not. We just don't want you to like being crazy about it.
Yeah, that's really that's really cool. Hang on. Yeah. So, who are your main YouTube influences, would you say?
I think the first was actually probably Computing Forever, and from him I found he mentioned Vice Rhino and Sargon and all them. I'd seen some of their videos, but not really. And then all of a sudden, I was messing around. Like, I found flat Earth videos. It's like, oh god, these people are morons. And from there I find Godless Engineer. I find Red's Rhetoric, Rhetoric and Discourse, and Logic. And I'm like, these people are great.
Yeah.
I was like, this is my kind of humor, especially Logic. Like, that dude is a cheeky asshole, and I love him for it.
Yeah. I'm sure he won't mind you describing him like that either.
I hope he doesn't.
Yeah, I love Logic. He's great, and he's really thorough as well. He's really thorough with his research.
It's just
as well as being hilarious. He is really thorough, and he knows what he's talking about. And
it's just. Sorry, keep going.
and he's a way of keeping you interested.
Yeah, I just love that, and like all the little jokes and stuff aside, like that is what like you can be the best speaker or whatever, but if you can't like keep somebody's attention, you're not very good. And he kept my attention all the time because I'm just always like, what is he going to say next? I've got a save file on my phone of just like different like one-liners he said that just like made me just bust out laughing.
Brilliant. Um, I what are your main goals? What do you hope to achieve with your YouTube channel?
Just try to show people what they what Christians believe and show how far it actually is from reality, and then also speak up about some of the just issues I've encountered throughout my life in it, and speak up about just the inaccuracies, and try to show, because I'm a history buff, I'm actually a history major, and that's just I hate hearing these urban legends and stuff like that about history, and then that's pretty much the whole Bible. So
Yeah.
it kind of grows from there, and I just really just want to inform people of the actual history because that's rarely done. I've never had a good history teacher until I got to college. I don't think we even made it past World War One in any of my history classes until I got to college.
Oh, right.
That's telling you how sad it is.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, that's a sorry state of affairs, isn't it, really?
It is. The I remember my one of my elementary history classes, and this was like in 2007. The book still had the Soviet Union.
Gosh.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
It is.
I remember when I was in primary school, our atlases were still mostly pink, showing the British Empire. That's how old they were. Yeah, I
That's
know, but they just didn't have the budget to get new ones. But I'm sure since then they probably have. When I was there, anyway, it was terrible.
yeah, but you can look at it like this. I mean, how long ago was the British Empire, and then how long ago was the Cold War, and how long have both U.S. and the U.K. been around? I think the one about still having the Cold War is a much larger proportion of our history than it should be.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
it was like ridiculous, and just stuff like that just gets on my nerves.
yeah, yeah. It must do. Would you like to teach history at college or
Oh, definitely.
something like that?
That's
Yeah,
I mean, I love history, and that's the classes that I've always been excelling at.
yeah.
And but I had to learn it all on my own. But I always enjoyed it, so learning it on my own wasn't too bad because I actually went all the way through the books instead of just to where we did in the class.
Okay.
And
Well,
I just remember how many inaccuracies I was taught, even up till high school, and that was just a few years back. And our history books, okay, and still say that the Exodus happened, even though it was disproven in like what was it, the 60s or whatever, when they excavated the area and they found no remnants of a settlement that could have ever had a population like that, and no evidence that the slaves Hebrews were ever even there.
yeah.
But the history books still had it, and these were new history books. It was just that they weren't taking that out. They were standing firm with it, and it's not very good.
No, that's a bit rubbish, isn't it? Really?
It is, and most history teachers I've had were actually like the coaches because you can just teach it out of the book. You don't actually have to know much of it.
Yeah.
So that was most of like the issues came from. Like I had one of my history teachers, and I'm not kidding you. He would on each test he would allow you say Jesus at least once, and he would take that as an answer because Jesus is always the answer.
Oh my God. Oh, that is terrible.
I mean,
Um,
I used it because sometimes I just didn't feel like doing a. I used it like we had paragraphs we'd have to write. I usually use it on that because I'm like I don't want to write this.
okay, yeah, okay.
I mean, take
Uh,
advantage of the system while you can.
yeah, well, exactly, yeah. Um, what, what music are you into?
uh, that's a list. I'll say what I'm not into. That's a shorter one.
Okay.
I hate pop, electronic, and most rap. Pretty much everything else. Oh, and modern country too. I hate that. But pretty much everything else, I love it.
Okay. Um, who, name three of your favorite bands.
Nirvana,
Brilliant.
uh, Metallica, and Trivium.
Oh, I haven't heard of them.
Oh, they're awesome. I think they're out of somewhere in Florida. They're a newer kind of metalcore band, but they're less. It's not like the girly kind of poppy kind of fake metal that was going on. This is legit like late '90s, early 2000s, post-hardcore, and
Okay.
it's like really enjoyable. There's just a whole dynamic sound about it. It's like every instrument is in its perfect like it's just like a sound. It's a wall of sound coming at you, and it's just perfect.
Brilliant.
And then the lyrics, which are one of my favorite parts, are always something very meaningful, not some kind of "I want to kill you, motherfucker. I'm pissed off." No, it's usually a story or something, which is my favorite kind of songs.
You'll have to send me a link to one of their songs on YouTube or something.
I could probably do that right now.
Cool. Um,
Uh, I'll send you the one that's my favorite.
brilliant. When you were still saved, did you like any Christian rock?
Very little, very little. I liken it to there's a South Park episode that was right after the Napster thing, and they he makes a reference how, or the fat kid Cartman makes a reference how Christian music is always easy. All you have to do is take the cheesiest love song you can, replace baby or her or him or whatever with Jesus, and there you go. And that's exactly right. Every single modern Christian song pretty much sounds exactly the same. They use the same, and they're all influenced by how like U2 sounds.
Yeah.
Like they all sound like U2 cover bands, and
I used to like
there's
I used to like Third Day.
I've heard some of them. I've never really enjoyed them. I've always been into the like what I'm really into is like the more extreme metals and stuff like that. But there's some bands there's one I really like. I still like them. It's Demon Hunter, and you wouldn't be able to tell that they were a Christian band just by listening to them because they're not proselytizing the whole time. It's literally just a song. They're a bunch of Christian guys in a band,
Okay.
and that I preferred that. So I think I've always kind of had this disdain for the religion a little bit.
All right.
Kind of happens though when you're forced to go there for most of your life.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
but yeah,
sorry, go.
Christian music is just not my thing. It never was, and it just annoyed me.
Yeah. Um, I used to try to kid myself that it was just as good as what I would call secular music. But there's just no comparison. Yeah.
No, there are a few crossover hits that are okay, but
Yeah.
was it? Trying to remember the band. Uh, it'll come to me in a minute. Wait, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to throw the questions over to the people watching
Okay.
in the chat. If you've got any questions for Strawman Atheists, go ahead. Um,
It just came to me.
Go
Meant to
on.
Live by Switchfoot.
Oh, I think I have heard of them. Yeah.
That's actually a fairly decent song. So I knew it would come to me.
Secular asks, does Strawman take music suggestions?
Yes, I do. I love music and I'm always looking for new artists. So I will, if you follow me on my YouTube channel or follow me on my Twitter, send me music. I love it. My messages are open. I don't have it blocked off. I don't mind if people send me stuff. If you want to just DM it or just tag me in it.
Yeah, I think I'll send you some.
Sounds good.
Frustrated Atheist asks, why are you stealing my history shtick?
Sorry. It's just from my point of view. I really haven't seen any other history, but I never really looked that deep for it. So if there is anybody else out there doing the history, I'm sorry. That's just my thing. I defaulted to it.
Okay, fair enough. Unholy Mole is asking, have you been getting harassed at all?
No, but I'm not open with it.
Okay.
That's because I am in the Bible Belt and I have a few friends that are open with it, and there you get the sneers, the glares, the people looking down on them and stuff like that. And like literally like the first thing when I told my buddy, he's like, don't tell anybody other than people that you know, because they're not going to hurt you, but they're going to make you into, you're going to be Satan to them.
Right.
I mean, because everybody here is pretty much religious. It's the college I'm at, like we did a survey, there was a survey out a while back, and I think 85% of the students identified as Protestant. I think it was like 5%. No, that was Protestant and Catholic. It's just Christian overall. Sorry. And then like 55% of that was Protestant. The rest of it was Catholic. And then there's just a few assorted. I think there's like 5% Muslim and like 2% Hindu, and then the rest was just assorted religions or no religion.
Oh, okay.
So I've not had any issues with it, but I'm not very open about it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I don't blame you. Yeah, it must be difficult. There doesn't seem to be any more questions in the chat. Is there anything more you'd like to add that we haven't touched on?
Not really. I mean, I think we covered most of the bases on me. If there's any more questions or if people think of them later, they can message me, and I love I'll respond to people. Like, I'm not going to sit there and just like ignore messages. I like to talk to people. So if anybody has any questions they think of later, they can send it to me. And for right now, I don't really know where all I'm trying to go because I'm really just starting out. But I have been working on a couple different ideas.
Okay. Well, Frustrated Atheist says, "Are you a godless Iowan?"
No, I'm not. I am. We've had that. Me and him have already actually had that discussion. I apologize for stealing his shtick too, and I was like, sorry. And then he posts this. He's like, the nerve of this guy, and it's a hilarious rant. He's hilarious and just was very good with the jokes.
Yeah, he's a great guy, actually.
Oh yeah.
And Secular wants to know what's your favorite period in history?
Oh, it's probably either the latter parts of the Roman and Byzantine Empire or World War One and Two.
Okay. What fascinates you about those periods of history?
The one with the one with the Romans and the Byzantines. It's just this. It's this kind of like you see this power struggle and this ego that they have, and it just keeps crumbling around them. And I just keep seeing that. I'm like, that just is so entertaining to see, like how they were all talking about how the empire can never fall, and you just hear all these stories of like these little things that just kept getting crazier and crazier. Like, was it the was it Caligula that or whatever was like one of I can't remember his name. It was like the craziest emperor Rome ever had, and I just love hearing those kind of stories. And then World War One and World War Two is just because I've always been like a big video game buff, Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, and it just started from there. I'm pretty sure if they had like Vietnam era games, I probably would have been defaulted to there instead. But
Yeah. The Unholy Mole is plugging his stream that is starting at 5 with Godless Engineer. And he said,
I'm gonna have to watch that. I love Godless Engineer.
yeah, so do I. And I love Unholy Mole as well, actually. He says, if you're wrapping up, I've got a stream starting at 5. I'm not sure whether that's Eastern or Central, but I guess it's going to be soon.
I think it's Central because he messaged me a while back and he said that he's in the same time zone as me.
All right, okay, yeah. So yeah, it must be 5 p.m. Central Time. So there's your plug, Unholy Mole. And 11 Spooky Bedhouse and 11 p.m. UK. So yeah, that's 10 minutes from now. Okay, I think we'll wrap things up then.
All right, this has been fun. I'm glad you invited me on.
Yeah, well, thanks for for coming on my channel. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for plugging me at the very start.
Yeah,
Like,
no problem.
My subs, like right after you tweeted that out, went from like 20 to like 60 in like a matter of minutes.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people have been supporting me, so it's only natural that I should pay it forwards.
Oh yeah.
And that's another reason why I started this introducing series, so I can help new YouTubers get a head start, kind of thing. Anyway, we'll wrap things up. Thanks for watching. If you've liked this video, then give it a thumbs up, and if you're new, then please do subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss another video. And do subscribe to Strawman Atheist and hit his bell too, so you never miss any of his videos, because they're going to be excellent. Okay, bye for now.